How you doing, guys? Big Mac Danskull here again today, back once again with another look at a Conquest magazine for you. Oh, I forgot what I was doing then. How stupid. Anyway, here it is, issue 27. So guys, let's take a look in the pages of issue 27. Oh no, we don't want to do that, do we? We want to know what we get in this issue. So, as it said on the back of last week's issue, this is the first issue with some sprues for the Rhino. You get these sprues, which basically, it all but builds you a complete Rhino. So, to say this is a good value issue is an understatement, really, I'd say. It's... When I say it's almost a complete Rhino, I've heard it's just the hatches you don't get, but I don't know which hatches they are, because you get the side hatches, you get the rear hatch, I'm sure you do, unless... Oh no, you get the rear hatch, you get the front, you get the bottom, the top hatches maybe? Yes, that's the only bit you don't get by the looks of it. The top hatches here, these two top hatches. So they must come on a separate sprue. You don't get that in this issue. But you can easily just cut out a circular bit of plasticard or get an old coin or something, stick it on there, and you've got yourself a Rhino effectively. So potentially, if you're willing to compromise, this is a great value issue. And as a Space Marine player, if you were a Space Marine player, I'd recommend you pick this issue up and just do a little bit of a conversion and get yourself some self-made hatches on there. We've even got some things we can use from previous issues, like the Rhinos you can add a pintle-mounted bolt gun or storm bolter to a Rhino, and these containers from a previous issue, still not used mine, come with these storm bolters which are supposed to sit on top of the containers. I'm likely to convert this container into a double-wide container. So the storm bolt I could potentially use on a Rhino if I wanted to. I'm trying to think if there's anything else you could do to do a little conversion here and there. There's these eagles on the container that you could add to the Rhino somewhere to make it a little bit more fancy. Yeah, there's ammo crates here and everything that you can stick on the Rhino as like stowage, but they're a little bit big for that really. But there's nice little conversions you can do. Oh yes, here's a conversion you could do, but it'd take a bit of delicate work. These top hatches for the containers could easily be cut out, I think, and then used as the top hatches on the Rhino. So, there we go. I've shown you a cheap way, potentially, to get the top hatches for the Rhino. So there we go, that's it. Great value issue, if you're willing to compromise slightly. Let's take a look between the pages, find out what we've got. We get Death Guard Rhino, as we know, History of the Death Guard, and Battle for Corvon 2 continues. First of all, there's a lot of lore in here about Rhinos. Funnily enough, here's a great picture here of two Crimson Fist vehicles. One's a Rhino, one's a Razorback. This, I think, is done in the style that Games Workshop like to do in some of the like the campaign books and stuff, where they take a really cinematic shot of some of their vehicles amongst some scenery, terrain here. If you ever go to Warhammer World, they've got display halls there and they've got loads of dioramas set up, and it's like they've just plonked the tanks down in one of these dioramas and added some smoke effects afterwards and stuff to make it look like a hazy battlefield. It's got the faction here, Adeptus Astartes, so it shows you that the Space Marines can take Rhinos too, if you don't want to add all the chaosy bits that will come in the next issue. So yeah, it's just encouraging Space Marine players to use this Rhino as well, I think. Although, of course, vast majority of the Space Marine miniatures that come with Conquest are Primaris Marines, and it does say here, note, cannot transport Primaris Space Marines, so it's up to you whether you wanted to take it for your Space Marine force, but we are getting some Scout miniatures in the later issues of Conquest, and you can take them in a Rhino, so potentially if you wanted to, as a Space Marine player, if you've not been buying the Death Guard issues, you could buy this issue, I'd say, and do your own little conversion for the hatches and then use it for your scouts in the future. Or if you're planning on picking up some standard Space Marines in the future, of course, use it for your standard Space Marines. Just going to peel this front cover off because it's falling apart quickly. So, we've done that page. Oh my gosh, it's all falling apart now. The next page, markings and heraldry. It talks you through the various places for the markings on the vehicle. So this tells you the battlefield role of the unit that's transported inside. Oh, it's battle line, yeah, so it's telling you the battlefield role of the unit that the Rhino is carrying. Close support, fire support, veteran, commander. And then chapter badge is on the front here. And then next we've got the company markings here. And following that, we can have campaign markings as well. So if you've got a unified force like Imperial Knights, Space Marines, Imperial Guard, I couldn't remember the name then one thing you can do to unify those forces is just add a campaign marking for the current campaign that they're taking part in. You can make it up yourself. Typically, in Warhammer 40k, you see a lot of schools, so school heraldry is always a good thing to add to campaign badges, but you might need to get a little practice on your freehand work to do that school, but you can also find school transfers in a lot of places as well. I think even the Space Marine transfer sheet comes with school transfers, so there we go, a little tip for you there. On the next page, this really is coming apart easily, so on the next page, we've got Rhino chassis variants. We've got a Vindicator here, which is a big siege tank with a massive dozer blade on the front and a huge cannon poking through it. A Whirlwind, which is like your artillery tank. It's long range fire support. The Stalker, which is an anti-aircraft vehicle. The Hunter, which I think is an anti-aircraft vehicle as well, but I could be wrong on that. It might be just an anti-armour vehicle. And the Predator, which again is anti-armour. You can mount a lot of las cannons on there, auto cannons, what else? Other weapons. Heavy bolters. I think you can get heavy bolters. You can do side sponsons. Anyway, I don't know about on the top of it. I'm just going to place these on the floor because they're wanting to go down there. And then it goes on to the Death Guard Rhino transports. Tells us a little bit about these and how they're corrupted by the Chaos energies, powers. And it also tells us that the Death Guard in the Horus Heresy, the Rhinos they had then, are completely different to the Rhinos they have now. So basically it tells us that this vehicle is formerly an Ultramarines vehicle, Decius it's called. Originally a venerable Rhino of the Ultramarines chapter, it now serves the Pallid Hand. So any vehicles they can capture, the Death Guard, they turn to their own uses and they paint them in their own colour schemes and corrupt them with the powers of Nurgle. And on to the next page, Chronicles of Virulence. This is the history of the Death Guard, as it said on the front page. It talks about all different battles and things involving the Death Guard, including some non-Imperium conflicts. So it talks about attacks by the Tau here. It talks about the Dark Eldar a little bit here. It goes on to talk about the Eldar or Eldari and the Orcs as well. There is. Well, it doesn't really matter. There's and it talks about a battle they lost here when Inquisitive Greyfax got involved as well. It talks about wins and losses for the Death Guard in the 41st millennium, basically. Angelic Vengeance. So we've got another short story here of the Dark Angels in this case. And I'm sure I must have read that. Yeah, I read it, but I can't remember what happens in it. I'm not going to read it. There we go. On to the next page, which is the How to Build Death Guard Rhino section. So it shows us the sprues we got in this issue. And you can see here, as I attempted to show you at the start, there's no top hatches there to fill these little holes. So 6 pages of how to build, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 pages of how to build. which is more than valid on a kit of this size. Size, yeah. More than valid on a kit of this size. And if we look at the sprue that's coming in the next issue, either this one and the other one, this has got the top hatches on it. It's got some like chaos iconography on the top hatches and stuff. So if you are buying all the issues anyway, but you wanted to use the Rhino for your Space Marines rather than your Death Guard, then you might need to scrape them off with a hobby knife, a box opener, a scalpel, whatever you want to call it. There's all sorts of hooks and stuff, combi weapons here, Havoc missile launcher, and I'll talk more about them in next week's episode. So it's quite a detailed build guide really, and then the last page it shows you all the spikes, like I said, more chaos iconography, dozer blade, and all the spikes can go on if you want to add them on, but I think they look better really without all those spikes. And then on to this mission, Blockade. So the Death Guard want to make sure that there's three gates to the entrance of this city. They're fighting over the Death Guard and the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines have captured 2 of the gates. The Death Guard wants to make sure they maintain their control of this gate. So that's what this battle's about. It gives you a nice little narrative. The southeast gate is what they're fighting over. And then on this page, here's a confession. I often criticise when there's a big picture and just a little bit of wording on these in these magazines, because I feel like it's a bit of a waste of a page. However, it occurred to me the other day as I was flicking through this, and then I saw this page. This is really cinematic stuff. It's like I said about the Rhino pictures earlier. It's really cinematic stuff. They've got a smoke effect going on there. There's a sort of corridor with buildings either side, a street with buildings either side, a tank trap here. It really draws you into the atmosphere of the battle that they're trying to create and that you want to try and create as well. So for me to dismiss this in previous issues of the magazine is probably a little bit, I don't know the right word, just a little bit hasty in dismissing it, because this is the sort of thing when I was younger that had drawn me right into the game and made me want to play the game. I'd want to have all my miniatures painted like that, and I'd want to have them face off against these horrible Death Guard pustules and horns coming out of them and all sorts of stuff. And that really helped me get in the mood to play, because I didn't read an awful lot when I was younger. So this stuff here I wouldn't have necessarily read. I'd have just looked at the pictures. I didn't read a book till I was 16 of my own choosing. I didn't read a book till I was 16. I obviously did like book reports in school and stuff like that, but I never really, a lot of the time I just skimmed it and just did my best with it, but I just didn't enjoy reading. Whereas a nice little short story like this isn't too challenging, and it's something I'm interested in, especially as a kid, like sci-fi, gothic wars, battles, stuff like that. And then seeing this picture to go along with it, it's almost like reading a comic book where you've got your pictures and your text bits, and they're all it's small and you can take it in really easily. But yeah, that's my thoughts and my sort of change of opinion on some of the things I've said on previous videos. So it's a really lore-rich issue, even with pictures like that. And then it goes on to talk more about the mission. So there's only one mission in this instance, and there's 2 objectives here. Let's have a look. The battlefield, the central road is the Space Marine deployment zone. So this blue area here is Space Marine deployment zone, and the Death Guard have created a pincer movement, and they're coming in from either side of the Space Marines. The contenders for the objectives are the Death Guard have 5 Plague Marines, 12 Poxwalkers, the Tainted Cohort, and Foul Blight Spawn. Space Marines have 5 Intercessors, 2 Hellblasters, 3 Aggressors, and Lieutenant Calcius. So looks like it's going to be tricky for the Space Marines to seize and hold those objectives. Talks about deployment more there, and victory conditions. Both armies gain 1 victory point for eliminating an enemy unit. At the end of the game, each of the tank traps is worth 3 victory points to the player who controls it. You control a tank trap if you have more models within 3 inches of it than your opponent at the end of the game. So the 2 tank traps at the end of the street there and there are what you're fighting over, really. One thing I'd say, a little tip for the Space Marine player: try and take out the Poxwalkers, because if they get near one of those tank traps, you're never going to outnumber them. So take out as many as them as possible. They might not do you any damage in return, so you could be tempted to ignore them, but I'd take them out because you don't want them getting near one of the objectives. The battle lasts for 5 rounds. So there we go. That's this week's issue. Really nice issue. I kind of sped through it because I'm excited about it. And next week's issue, I've got more pages falling away here now. Next week's issue, we get the second half of the Rhino there, and the following week we get these, another sprue from the Dark Imperium box. Now, interestingly, it's another Space Marine sprue from the Dark Imperium box. We've had 2 Space Marine sprues from that now, so it'd be nice to see a Death Guard sprue, I think. But we'll see what's coming. I don't know what's coming the week after. I can't remember. It's issue 30, I reckon. I'm going to take a guess. It's some terrain. Might not be. Might be some paints. We'll see. We'll see if I reckon it might be a little bit of terrain. The first lot of Rise of Pattern Ruins I'm going to go for, but that's a complete guess. But there we go. That's all we've got this week. Another great issue. Lots of lore in this one, and lore specifically about rhinos. A little bit of lore about the Death Guard, just to give you a little bit more of the flavour of them. And the really thematic setup to the battle report in this one, which I really liked. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the battlefield.